Planning the deployment of an Azure SQL database. The very first thing which we have to check when we want to decide about SQL Azure database is it having any functional limitation which probably my application would need. For example, Azure SQL database does not support full text search, or it does not support SSIS and SSAS services. So if these kind of requirements come up, we cannot make use of Azure SQL database. So in such kind of cases, we will have to then go for something like a SQL Server virtual machine. Yes, we can then use Azure as infrastructure as a service, where we can make use of the SQL Server virtual machine, and of course that is going to support all those things which probably we would have them in our on-premise SQL Server Enterprise or Standard Edition. So that is the first important thing which we have to take care of while planning for Azure database. But once we have planned for Azure database, there are multiple pricing tiers which are available. Which one is the most appropriate is also a very important decision, because there is a huge difference in terms of their pricing. See, if I take you to the database and the pricing tier here, you see an option right from basic costing you approximately $300 per month to something like premium 15, which is going to cost 961,000 bucks per month. Where is 299 and 961,000? Huge difference is there. So choosing one of these pricing tier is very important. So what is that these decisions are based upon? One is the intended workload. Implies what is the kind of load my database is going to have. How many simultaneous requests it is going to get. That means the concurrent requests. How many people are going to simultaneously log in, concurrent logins. Number of sessions which my database has to create. How much is the size of database required. All these things are going to be a deciding factor to choose from one of the pricing tiers. See, what is always recommended is we start with some basic version, and as the need grows, we grow from basic to maybe standard, and in standard also from S1 to S3, and then grow from S3 standard to premium P1, and then again P2, P3 and so on, maybe up to P11 and P15 also, which is now supported. So gradually upgrading the pricing tier is anytime recommended, rather than in beginning itself choosing a high pricing tier, because we may not need those much amount of resources. So it is very important that yes, we need to figure out what is the intended workload on our application, on the database, or through our application on the database, and accordingly what are the scaling limits. These are the limiting factors based on the different parameters and the basic tiers. So there is something called as DTU, which is very important, database transaction unit. It is a relative measure of the database ability to handle resource demands on need basis. So when I say that basic has 5 DTU and premium has up to 1750 DTU, it is so many times faster. 5 DTU, and if I choose let us say standard with 10 DTU, this is going to be double the speed of the 5 DTU. So going back here, you see now here it is up to 5 DTU, 100 DTU will become 20 times faster, and likewise 10 DTU is 2 times faster, and of course this is 2 times faster than this. So DTU is the relative measure of database ability to handle the resources, the performance. So we have to choose based on the intended workload, appropriate pricing tier, and the DTUs available. Also, what is different is point in time restore. You see here, there is a point in time restore facility in almost all cases. But the difference is here point in time restore is 7 days, whereas in standard we have got 35 days. Point in time restore is 35 days. Same is the case with premium also, 35 days. What does it mean? If I have chosen basic, I can go back to my database state as it was any time in last 7 days. Maybe yesterday, how was my database? I can restore to that state. Whereas in this standard and premium, we can go back up to 35 days. So this is not correct here. 14 days is not correct anymore. It is now changed from 14 to 35 even for standard. We have got disaster recovery. We are always going to have multiple copies of our databases. Whether it is in the same location or in different geolocation is also going to be decided based upon your configuration, and I'm going to cover this later. We are having maximum in-memory OLTP storage. In-memory storage is there in premium, which gives high performance. Here we are going to have maximum concurrent request, maximum concurrent logins. See the numbers as they are changing. So yes, one thing is very clear, the pricing tier is going to decide the performance of my database along with the storage and other resources. And all these things are expressed in terms of DTUs, database transaction units. Now, what is very important is when we are creating a database in SQL, in Azure, we have the choice of either going for a traditional approach where we will have a dedicated set of resources for each database, or we can have a pool of databases. We call it as elastic pool. And for that pool, we are going to allocate resources which are going to be shared between the multiple databases all hosted in the same pool. That pool is referred as elastic pool. So I'm going to talk about elastic pool, but let me be very clear. The traditional approach is for a given database, we simply choose a pricing tier, and all these resources based on the pricing tier chosen are allocated for that particular database. Very important point to note, whether you really use those resources or you do not use them, whether you need them or you don't need them. Once you have taken the pricing tier, you are going to be billed accordingly. So for example, if you have got a requirement of only, let us say 500 GB, or maybe 250 GB only is the requirement of storage, and if you have chosen premium, it does not mean that you are going to be billed less. 250 GB can be accommodated by a standard edition. So why should we go for premium edition? We can happily use one of the standard only. You can choose based on the DTUs, the speed. 250 is consistent, but speed is going to change based on the DTU. So that is one option you have. But what is this elastic pool and how important it is? Especially, this elastic pool is going to be useful when I am going to have multiple databases hosted in Azure and all in the same logical server. What I'm going to do is all these databases, I'm going to make it as a part of same pool. And to this pool, we are going to provide eDTUs. Rather than using DTU, we call them now as elastic DTU. Now, why they are called as elastic DTU? Based on the requirement, automatically the DTUs allocated to that database is going to change. It is not fixed. Basically, we can say that it is going to auto scale it. So a pool is given a fixed number of eDTUs and the price is fixed for that eDTUs number. Within the pool, individual databases are given the flexibility to auto scale within set parameters. The eDTUs can increase or eDTUs can decrease. Provisioning resources to the entire pool rather than single database simplifies your management task. Plus, you have the predictable budget for the pool. That is important. For a pool, we are able to restrict the budget And at the same time, we do not have to do a lot of database management individually. Whenever the load is heavy, database consumes more EDTUs, and whenever the load is low, database will consume less EDTUs. So when one database is consuming less EDTU, the remaining EDTUs can be consumed by another database which has more load. So that is the basic advantage. Sharing is the concept here. And not only that, when you know that EDTUs which are allocated to your pool are not sufficient, you can always increase the number of EDTUs for your database, or you can as well decrease it. Increasing and decreasing can be done without any database downtime, and obviously there will not be any impact on the databases in the Elastic pool. This is a really beautiful feature. EDTUs can be increased or decreased on need basis. You can add or subtract databases also from the pool. Not necessary that once the pool is up, you cannot remove databases or add databases and it is constant. No. If you know that you're still not making use of all the database features, I mean all the EDTUs in a given database, you can add more databases to it. So that is very, very important. In short, Elastic Pool is a share of multiple databases where EDTUs are allocated to databases which are going to be used for giving them optimum performance on demand. But is every database qualifying for a pool? Not necessary. If suppose the database has a very predictable requirement and a consistency is there in the amount of load and the amount of queries which have to execute, the number of simultaneous requests, if there is consistency, then it is not a good candidate for a pool. Then we should obviously go for a dedicated resource for that particular database. But if a database has very inconsistent usage, something like this, let us say, sometimes it is very high and sometimes it is very low. It is not consistent usage. EDT utilization is not consistent. In those kind of cases, we can overlap the database EDTU usages of multiple databases and see if there is a lot of overlapping happening. You see here, this database, blue color, has 90 DTU requirement, but at another time, there is a different database which has 90 EDTU requirement. Blue does not have any load at that time. So this is the kind of usage. We can go for a database pool and put all the 4 databases in a single pool such that at any point of time 90 DTUs are not being used by all of them at the same time, but at different times they are making use of it. And likewise, you see, you can not only overlap 4, but you can overlap up to 40 databases, up to 20 databases. Rather, it can be 40 also, it can be 100 also. There is no restriction on number of databases in DTU. Only thing we have to ensure that one database itself is not consuming all the resources when other databases also would need them at the same time. Yes, I repeat, database are great candidate for elastic pools only if they have high DTU requirements at different times. They do not have activity at the same time, and all of them at the same time do not have high DTU requirement. So that you have to keep in mind. So how do you create this elastic pool? You have to go to the server, logical server, and in logical server you'll have to add a pool, new pool. Let's say elastic pool 1 or demo pool. Based on the requirement you can give a name. Then pricing tier. Here also you have the option of choosing the more appropriate pricing tier, basic, standard or premium. And then what is important is based on the pricing tier chosen, you can actually now go for the pool configuration. You can specify what is the minimum number of EDTUs and what is the maximum number of EDTUs which your database would need at any point of time. Pool EDTUs. Of course, this all can be on the basis of usage which will be listed here. So what we generally do is, first we will have the elastic pool created. After that, we can have in the elastic pool multiple databases added. How to do that? First, let us create a pool. 100 ETTUs, 0 databases. Let us create it. Right now, there are no databases. So, pool is going to get created here without any databases. Done. Now, go to the server. Have the option of elastic pool. Here, click on the elastic pool, and then we can add database to it. Go to configure pool, add to pool, and you can choose. I can say both the databases are part of my pool. So database within pool, which I need to refresh again, save it, successfully saved. Elastic pool, configure pool. Actually, what will happen is here we are going to see the resource utilization, and then database selected for removal, database selected to be added per database settings. This per database setting is important. I can say maximum per database can have is 50 and minimum I'll restrict is 10. So at any point of time, I'm ensuring that two databases each can use up to 50 each. So elastic database 2 where maximum 10 are allowed, and this is based on the pricing tier which I have chosen at the time of creating the database. And here you see the performance. Obviously, the person who is managing this will have to ensure that he keeps frequently visiting this section and understanding how is the graph and deciding accordingly to vary the number of pools for each database. So yes, I believe you understood this, but more understanding will be there provided you start using this feature. But in short, net to net, Elastic Pool gives you the facility where the resources can be shared, EBTUs can be shared against multiple databases. So we have two major deployment models available. Traditional approach where we have a dedicated set of resources, and this is ideal when we have fixed amount of resource utilization throughout, or when we have unpredictable usage for every database. Putting them all into a single pool and allocating resources to a pool is anytime a better option. So this is all about planning of our